About that during his talk.
Almost like it's in bold.
I don't know. All right, so we're hot and we're ready to go. I'm here to intro Dan Kaminsky, who needs no introduction. However, who has been to the Shmoocon.org website and downloaded the Dan Kaminsky Shmoocon ad? That's sexy, right? I love Dan. I certainly like. I feel very secure in my manhood. I can say things like that. Geek love. That's G33K love, right? What was that? Strange man love? Didn't we say that was going to happen here? Shmoo balls, baby. Sweaty shmoo balls. So I pick on him a little bit. And that's it. I don't know him. Dude, as soon as we get back, I'm taking you off Orchid. He gives a lot of presentations, and he always promises me that he'll have something new, and he's never failed to deliver. Never failed to deliver. I don't think there's any Dan Kaminsky talk that I've been to that I haven't learned something new. So if anybody, there's always that complaint. It's the same talk. No, it's not the same talk. And I'll be the first one to tell you that it's not the same talk. So Dan has cool stuff, and he's going to show cool stuff, and you should respect that. Round of applause for Dan.
Hi. What's up, guys? Thanks, everyone, for coming out to see me. I really appreciate the attention and the time, and just, these are my toys. This is what I play with, and for some reason, everyone seems to like them. What's up?
Is there a Nathan McGurk in the audience? We have your prawn.
Nathan McGurk, there is a flash available for you, apparently. Or a USB stick. Nathan McGurk? All right.
I've been needing a USB dongle all afternoon to play some Galaga.
What he doesn't realize is there's actually an exploit on that thing. And he figured someone would plug it in. Didn't realize it would be Beetle. So, who am I? I do stuff. So, what are we here to do today? Did I even put in the shrine? I didn't even mention this tiniest shred of MD5, so I'll mention it now. So we actually have MD5 collision code now. Optics actually went ahead and released some code that'll do MD5 collisions. So if you were here last year, when I said, yeah, but we don't actually have any code that'll collide MD5, oh, no, we actually do now. And maybe later on I'll show you a little bit of stuff I've been playing with that. So what are we going to do? Some IP fragmentation attacks. This is an ancient realm of research that we actually have one small thing left to do at layer 3 is vaguely astonishing. We are going to mess with firewalls and intrusion protection systems, which is always fun. DNS poisoning attacks. I am not someone who usually goes ahead and attacks things. I don't usually break things. But if you are a security vendor and you are releasing crappy code, your job is to release non-crappy code. Anyone hear about this thing going on with Sony? Anyone? We're going to mess with Sony. I have new data. Forget the old stuff. This stuff's like even more accurate. We're going to flood the net with some traffic, a couple gigs, terabytes, petabytes. But pretty pictures, because pretty pictures are always good. So, start from scratch. Introducing IP fragmentation. Fragmentation, an interesting early architectural error that shows how much experimentation was going up while IP was being designed. This is Paul Vixie basically saying, oh my God, were we smashed when we did this? Oh my. Yeah, so the basic idea of fragmentation, and you'll see this in a large number of protocols, is if a packet's too large for some underlying physical network layer, well, you either don't send it or you have to split it up into some sub-packets. We already packetized to split our data, but let's go even again and do it once more, and this time actually respect the fact that we're not fitting this square peg in that round hole. So, why is this a problem? Well, IP fragments are, IP is supposed to be stateless. That means you just fire and forget something and you don't have to think about any kind of established memory storage, some established state. Fragments are great for a sender. Yeah, this packet's too big. I'll just split it in two and send it. They're not so great for the receiver because a receiver has to go ahead and when they receive one fragment, they can't finish with that fragment. They can't throw it away. They can't pass it on to some other higher layer. They have to keep it around for when the next fragment comes or from when the next series of fragments come, which means they now need to go ahead and allocate very low-level resources for what's essentially a protocol that's supposed to be stateless. The whole message was you're just going to receive something and you'll immediately be able to react. Once you insert fragmentation, you can no longer immediately react because you have to wait until you get the rest of the fragments. So, there's a lot of history here. It's been a major mechanism for evading intrusion detection systems. Tim Newsham and Tom Patchak back in 1998, we're talking 8 years ago, released a paper called Insertion, Evasion, and Denial of Service, Eluding Network Intrusion Detection. And between the attacks they described in 98 and the tool that Doug Song released in 99, pretty much every major intrusion detection platform, you were able to go ahead and take exploits and make them completely invisible to most of the intrusion detection systems. It was pretty brutal. It was a bloodbath. And a lot of systems actually went ahead and ended up responding to what these tools created. So given the age of these attacks, I mean, 98, 99, we're talking a long time in internet years. That entire layer has been mostly picked clean. If there's a problem, you'd think we would have found it by now. Is there anything left? Well, when I was looking at what I was going to do for my latest research, I started thinking, well, what's going on right now in security? And at the time, everyone was talking about timing attacks. DJ Bernstein went ahead and noticed that you could actually break some systems that were using AES just by looking at the difference it took to encrypt one message versus another. And he went ahead and released code. Like, hey, look, here's an OpenSSL stack. I'm going to cause it to go ahead and encrypt a bunch of data using a key I don't know. I'm going to measure how long it takes for it to send me a response. And, oh, hey, look, here's the key. Damn, that's not good. So timing attacks were a big deal. And I started thinking, well, are there any timers in IP? And yeah, there actually is. The IP fragment reassembly timer. Well, there's a maximum amount of time that you will sit around waiting for a fragment before you say, you know what? I'm not getting the rest of this packet, so I give up. So it will go ahead and after a certain amount of time, flush all fragments that were attached to some packet. Now, libnids. I got an email. How many people here have actually heard of libnids? I love Shmoocon. So libnids is actually a library where you pass it packets and it passes you what stream of data those packets contain. This is actually non-trivial. They basically had to take Linux's 2.0 stack and use it to go ahead and reassemble traffic. So you literally take the entire stack and put it in a bubble and say, here, what does this look like to you? And actually, in the libnids documentation, I got an email from the developer about 3 or 4 days ago, and he said, oh yeah, we actually noticed that you have to correctly handle IP fragment reassembly timers. He actually did not realize why, though. He didn't actually document what the attacks would be, and that's what this does. Now, these timers, the amount of time that an operating system will wait, differs from operating system to operating system. Okay, yeah, so that's a fingerprint. This is mechanism number 834. You can differentiate Linux from Windows. Can we do something more? Let's try to evade a network intrusion detection systems. So what if an intrusion detection system has a different concept of expiration time versus the host? Well, if the intrusion detection system is going to throw away packets before the host does, our attack is very simple. You send it too slow for the IDS, but fast enough for the host. Done. Yeah. But what if it's the other way around? What if the host expires first? For example, Linux and FreeBSD will go ahead and expire their packets, expire fragments after 30 seconds. But in Snort's Frag2, it will take 60 seconds. So is it possible to still evade an intrusion detection system when a timer lasts longer than that of the actual host? And the answer, well, it better be yes, or I wouldn't be standing up here. Here's a problem. IDS, holding fragments for too long. Here's a solution. Well, let's make the IDS drop some fragments. Well, how do we do that? Fragments will leave the reassembly queue when either they aren't reassembled because it expired, or when they are reassembled. Is it possible to give the intrusion detection system something to reassemble against without causing the target host to undergo a similar reassembly? And the answer to that question is yes, using a timing attack. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to take our packet, and we are actually going to have two packets that we really want to happen, because we want the intrusion detection system to see something nice and innocent, a nice little request for index.html. And then we're going to have what we want the IDS to, that's what the IDS should see. The host, however, should see like the old MSADC attack, or maybe a SQL injection. Whatever the host sees, we certainly don't want the intrusion detection system to see the same thing. Now, if you look at this, there's actually a common header. Whether you're doing a OK fragment, index.html, or a malicious fragment, MSADC, there is a common header, HTTP 1.1 get. So here's what we'll do. First off, we're going to send what we want the intrusion detection system to see. We want it to see OK frag, index.html. And then we wait. After 30 seconds, the host will drop that payload. It will drop index.html, but the intrusion detection system won't. And what we now do is we send the intrusion detection system header, HTTP 1.1 get. Now, well, actually, let's go to the next slide where I actually show the actual timeline here. At t equals 0, when you send the malicious payload, the host has the malicious fragment, the IDS has the malicious fragment. At t equals 30, the host has nothing. It's given up. It's expired the data. But the intrusion detection system is keeping that fragment around. At t equals 31, we send the header. Now, the host has, excuse me, did I actually have that backwards? No, excuse me, wait. What the heck did I put there? That's on crack. All right, we're going to ignore that slide because apparently I'm, talking to some Colombians here. Ignoring that slide, after 30 seconds, the host has nothing. But the intrusion detection system still has an OK payload. Now, if we provide the header, what's going to happen? The intrusion detection system is going to have a header, and it's going to have an OK payload, an OK fragment. It is going to combine them into a full, no problem, HTTP 1.1 get index.html. And it's going to flush both fragments, and it's going to emit up the stack a nice innocent thing that's not going to cause any flags. No problem, right? But that's what the intrusion detection system is doing. Our host, however, already dropped the acceptable fragment. All it gets is the header. So at t equals 31, at 31 seconds, the host just has a header. The intrusion detection system has nothing. Now what happens if we provide the malicious payload? The host has header. The host has malicious payload. The host reassembles. But the IDS can't reassemble because it already dropped the header fragment because it used it against the good part. So that's how this attack works. You guys kind of clear with how that works? Yeah. Excellent.
Dan?
Yeah, what's up?
Wouldn't at that point the IDS now have
But the thing is, it's already flushed. That's the thing. Once it took the shared header, the shared header happens once. It has already mixed the shared header with the OK fragment. And so that drops. If it didn't drop, there are a whole bunch of other attacks you can do. So now when it got the host, and instead of the IDS, the host already dropped the OK fragment. So when it got the header, it did not reassemble. So it was set up to go ahead and get the malicious fragment. Excellent. So some intrusion protection systems will actually handle this. And they will handle this because they're able to notice, hey, look, even though I've reassembled these packets or fragments, I've dealt with these IP IDs before. I've reassembled this packet before. Something weird is happening. There are actually some intrusion protection systems that will do that. So what do we do now? Well, people here know what IPSs are. They're basically intrusion detection systems that have a firewall built into them. They are inline, or they have control over the firewalls themselves, so they become inline, and they are able to basically not only monitor traffic, but censor it. And these dynamic rule sets that they have can trigger on increasingly obscure faults across the entire communication stack. And what they will trigger against is going to differ from product to product, version to version. Now, simultaneously, as they're doing these more and more obscure things, they're under higher and higher levels of scrutiny. You start seeing attacks not just against end hosts, but actually against the various security infrastructure that is being deployed through architectures. So you start seeing a reassembly stack for, I don't know, ICQ messages. And it would go ahead and, oh, hey, look, you're reassembling this badly because you've got, 300 different protocols that you're going to reassemble instead of one. I bet you're going to do one of them poorly. So there have been a large number of advisories fairly recently regarding vulnerabilities in security products. When up here we're going ahead and we're blocking data, we leak. We're telling people, hey, if you send this, I'm going to block it. And they can go ahead and remotely see that. Attackers can remotely see that one message was blocked and another one wasn't. So what that means is, ultimately blocking sends information. Is it possible to use this leaked information to fingerprint security architectures? Well, let's look at my slide from like 3 years ago. This is when I was doing work on ScanRand, my big network scanning thing. And one of the things I found is, we had a PIX firewall, and when there is a real reset act, my ScanRand tool would see that there was 11, that the host was 11 hops away. But when it was the PIX that was instead sending the reset act, it would reflect as 22 hops away. Now this happened to get linked to a bug in PIX where it sent a reset, it would send the reset using the original TTL from the incoming packet. In fact, to be completely correct, it would receive a packet that it didn't like, and it would swap a couple fields and send them back out. And it wouldn't reset the TTL like a real stack would do. So it was very easy to detect, hey, look, this particular firewall is in the way. We can generalize this. A tipping point device will not accept packets that are TCP out of order. It assumes every packet arrives in order. A checkpoint firewall will not allow, at least by default, DNS packets that actually declare DNSSEC. There are all sorts of things. Will a given hop block invalid checksums, invalid options, out of order fragments, invalid TCP types, invalid ICMP types, invalid ICMP subtypes? Let's go all the way up into application layers. Invalid HTTP request types, WebDAV traffic, particular MSADC, and a SQL injection, an old SQL injection, a new SQL injection. Look at the entire set of things inside of libwhisker. So you've got all these various different things that you can test with to see if a particular packet is going to reach all the way to the destination. And then you can go ahead and use the firewalk methodology that Mike Schiffman put together, where you can take an arbitrary payload and just TTL walk with it. So I see, well, will the SQL injection get 1 hop away? Will it get 2 hops away? Will it get 3 hops away? The more intelligent the network devices are getting in parsing the traffic happening over the network, the easier it is for us to go ahead and fingerprint precisely what's there. Because we're starting to be able to go ahead and have more and more complex data and see, well, is this going to elicit a reaction or not? And it is very, given the scale of complexity, it looks like we can go ahead and pretty much fingerprint every vendor's product. So when we in the security industry say, security vendors, write good code or you will suffer, it's because there really is no secrecy in terms of ultimately what is running to protect your networks. People are able to find out. IPv6. IPv6 reassembly is a coming fingerprint. What encapsulations will a given intrusion detection system or intrusion actually not? What encapsulations will an intrusion protection system support? There are so many variations, and they chain. My God, I've been joking for a while that IPv6 and IPv4 encapsulation is becoming Turing complete. V6 and V4 and V6 and V4, and here's some Teredo and back to V6 and back to V4, and would you like some isotop with that? There's no way near all of them could be parsed by every client. So there's lots and lots of different signatures about what a particular, whatever your attack is that I just described, now go ahead and start encapsulating it in various games at layer 3. Because not all chains should work for every client, what is an intrusion protection system supposed to do? How can an intrusion protection system have any hope of predicting what its clients will perceive? Because you're going to have new devices, new software, new all sorts of stuff. Well, we've got a couple options here, right? One, we can only enforce a couple encapsulations. You know what? You're allowed to use isotop on this network. Teredo? No. You want to use V6 and V4 using the other thing? No. You can go ahead and do that. The problem is it's not very stable. We really haven't done enough with V6 for it to filter out what are the encapsulations that are going to be supported and which ones aren't. So this approach kind of makes the IPv6 to IPv4 internet fall apart. Yeah. You really don't know when you send a packet if it's going to get all the way to the destination, and that's kind of bad. I really don't want to see V4 to V6 turn into we're doing IP over HTTP because it works. That would suck. Mode 2 is actually to scrub. Whatever you get, unpack it, look at it, see if you like it, and if you do like it, repack it into some standardized encapsulation. Packet scrubbing is cool, but as far as I can tell, there's not been a scalable scrubbing solution yet. Scrubbing could also be considered normalization. Whatever it is, whatever crap you get in, turn it into something rational that you know your hosts have to handle. The third approach is interesting. See an encapsulation you don't recognize? Ask. Eliminate their payload, take a safe payload like a ping, and encapsulate the ping according to the encapsulation strategy that you witnessed. If you do this, you will over time either, oh, here's an encapsulating strategy I've never seen before against this target. Try it using safe content. If it doesn't work, you don't need to carry that traffic. If it does work, you now know that this is an encapsulation strategy that will work, and therefore you should support it for this particular target. It's an interesting mechanism, and it keeps you synchronized with every individual endpoint host. And ultimately, as a network intrusion device, you are at a loss. You are at a weakness. You are not the actual stack. You are not the actual vendor. You are pretending to understand what's actually going on the network. So as long as you're pretending, why don't you ask the guy that actually is on the network if he might see anything at all? Hang on. Come.
You're close enough. What if, he's sending you HTTP and then you try to ping him, but he just drops the ping? Wouldn't you kind of ignore him?
So this is actually an interesting thing. What if there is blocking at higher levels for your probes? So you might get an HTTP request done with some magic encapsulation, and you're like, well, I don't want to look at the HTTP request yet, but let's take a ping and put it in that magic encapsulation. And what if the ping is blocked? The answer to that is you can only do this on networks where there's some message that you can assume will elicit a response. And maybe it's because it's a request that came from, your magic device. But yes, you absolutely need to deal with the fact your bit of information must be a query against layer 3. It must not be a query against layer 4 through 7. But you'll realize this really quick because every new strategy is going to end up coming in through this mechanism, and your network will not work if you don't do this right. So, what's up?
Move the mic away from us just slightly.
Yeah. Okay.
Powering the next talk.
Apparently, I am speaking loud enough for both rooms. Sorry, guys. So, what should intrusion protection systems not do? All right. Oh, so apparently I am getting recorded. Whatever. I will stand here. It'll keep me from pacing. All right, so here's the deal, right? Intrusion protection systems should not, however, do this. Well, after sufficient amounts of invalid traffic, we're going to make the business decision that you are a bad host, and perhaps we should just not talk to you. I mean, after all, you're only 0.01% of the internet. How important could you be? Do you guys have any idea how many networks stopped responding to me from my massive DNS scans? I'm sending DNS traffic. They have no idea who I am. I could have just been them. So, yes, if you spoof malicious traffic from the root servers, and you've got networks that are blocking anyone who does malicious traffic, you don't need that DNS thing anyway. It's overrated. We didn't need to access anyone. So the only problem with this attack is that it's a little, kind of shutting down all internet connectivity might spawn an investigation. Gee, I wonder why things are down. Also, this has been whispered about for years. So I can't just come up here and be like, hey, this is the new stuff. Hey, look, you can flood, because, that's kind of known. There are, however, other name servers besides the root servers. Now, I've been investigating DNS poisoning. Is it possible that this channel can be used to do not just block everyone, but very targeted DNS poisoning attacks? And the answer is, oh yeah. So the general theme is to block communication between two arbitrary name servers. Now, why is this bad? Well, it's a targeted denial of service. Say customers from a particular network, they're unable to contact a particular bank, merchant, or email provider. I just want to see what time it is here. All right, cool. Yeah, that's the bad. You just can't access. Crap. Worse is a targeted DNS poisoning. Now, you can look at DNS as a bit of a race, right? You send out a request, and someone's going to reply. But the person you sent the request to has an advantage. They know everything they need to know to get a successful reply to you. They have the transaction ID and they have the source port. And also, there's a small window. Most machines on the net you can reach within a couple hundred milliseconds. A bad guy would have to have all the correct information within this very small window, and if they screw it up, well, the right answer is going to be cached, so they maybe can try again in 24 hours if they know exactly when to try to send you a packet. Right. Not hugely reasonable. But what happens if the legitimate guy has been blocked at the firewall? It's like getting into a race and you blew out the other guy's kneecaps. He can't even crawl. And so you win. It turns out this is very possible, and you can block this if either the client or the server is doing the automatic firewalling, you can essentially hijack name server traffic. And here's how you do it. Easy way is you spoof malicious traffic from the client network to the server network. So you've got some bank, it sees some podunk ISP, and they're sending them all this nasty traffic, and the bank says, business decision, podunk ISP, go away. Sounds great, except now podunk ISP is sending out requests and nothing's coming back, and our bad guy can actually can go to the Podunk ISP's name server and just say, hey, you, since you're just accepting recursive lookups from anyone on the internet, go look up the bank and just keep trying. And there'll be all these outstanding requests, and you only need to try about 32,000 before you win. This problem is caused by security code that's supposed to make things better, and very noticeably is not. Now, you might say, whoa, damn. We're a secure Podunk ISP. We go ahead and we don't allow just random people on the internet to go ahead and cause us to do DNS lookups. Well, funny thing, and I'll mention a little about this later, there are a lot of networks that if you go to a web server, it will do a reverse lookup on your IP address. And when it does a reverse lookup on your IP address, it has to go ahead and traverse DNS, which means it has to go ahead and figure out, oh, I'm going to go to this server, and it's going to forward me over here, going to forward me over here, and oh, look, I need to look up Bank of America or Bank of this to go ahead and resolve this reverse. And oh, now I went ahead and did the triggered lookup. So yeah. The bottom line is just because you don't have recursion going on does not mean you do not have recursion going on, because there's all these other things that will instantiate a recursion whether you like it or not at the application layer. Now, this is the client to the server, but it turns out both sides can cause this situation to happen. What if you have the server network pair to be attacking the Podunk ISP? Podunk ISP, oh dear God, the bank is attacking us. Good thing our magic security code is going to protect us. The client's going to go out and send requests, but the server's responses are blocked. Now wait, aren't our own responses going to be blocked as well? I mean, client goes out, server tries to reply, and it gets blocked. And shouldn't we have to spoof being the bank to go ahead and get our responses back? Funny thing about DNS, sometimes when you talk to a name server, some other IP comes back to you. And this is totally legitimate. It turns out that you have lots of name servers. You have some name servers out there that are multi-hosted. They have multiple IP addresses. And they'll receive traffic on lots and lots of IP addresses, but they'll only send their responses back on one. There's no what's called affinity between where the request came from and where the response goes to. Or, excuse me, the source IP of where the response comes from. So what this means is all the name servers out there are very happy to receive traffic from any IP address in the world. With the firewall, you get, we'll accept traffic from every IP except the one IP that's actually supposed to send us a response. Oops. Moral of this story, automated network shunning is a very bad idea. It might not actually be a good idea to give the world access to your firewall tables. Thank you. So, moving on. I got a toy. It's awesome. It has like 170 gigs of traffic and complete political permission to use it. Fun. Brought to me by these guys over this company called Prolexic. They're like these third-party firewall services. If you're getting DDoSed, you route all your traffic to them. They filter it for you and then give you the good stuff. I did some work with them about a while ago with this thing called Opti, big internet scan. Pretty pictures. See, telling you, it's all about the pretty pictures. So I can't generate packets faster than this network can route them. I actually feel less like a man. So I've been using them, and I've been probing the internet's DNS infrastructure, and I've been pulling in some other people, Mike Schiffman over at Cisco, and Sebastian Kramer at the University of Potsdam, and gee, maybe one of you guys. I'm really looking for other people to go ahead and I have like 80 gigs of DNS logs right now. I could not possibly analyze it all myself, let alone all the bandwidth that I have to generate new packets. So I'm really looking for people who have ideas for what can we do to make the internet more secure using pipe larger than I can actually wrap my mind around. So, what are the rules of using this thing? They have to be legitimate packets. I can't go out exploiting things. Not that I would, but I can't. I wanted to know, since I've been looking at DNS, well, what the heck is this network? How prevalent is DNSSEC support? Where do we need to invest resources to protect this environment? We cannot manage what we can't measure. as an attempt to measure. Now, I'm not the first to do a large-scale network scan. I'm well aware. I'm also well aware there's very extended capabilities to prevent people from doing things like this if they're not good guys. I lost my colo in like 30 minutes. Like dominoes. You will get complaints. You will get calls from very scary sounding places. And that's good. It means the net has indeed evolved defenses against random people going ahead and putting stuff together. So what did I do? Registered reverse DNS, registered a website, got a website up, cell phone numbers on the website. I'm registered in Aaron. That's cool. So basically, when I do these scans, I just sort of accept that I will get, about a dozen calls a day or a dozen emails a day. Might get woken up by scary agency number 384. Actually, I think the second best email I got was basically demanding details, and the response, "Thank you for the information. We will see you in Vegas." When I say, if you have an idea, please contact me, it's because I will deal with this for you. You probably don't want that. So, oh dear. We know what you do 100%. You not fool us at all. English is a beautiful thing. Yeah. So, back in March of last year, Google was taken out by an exploit that hit all DNS systems that forwarded to all Microsoft DNS name servers that forwarded to bind 4 or bind 8. It's kind of an ugly little scenario. Microsoft DNS would trust anything that was forwarded to it, and bind would forward anything without doing any tests. If you go to the bind webpage, it says, "For the love of God, do not allow bind 8 to be your forwarder." However, it turns out bind 8 is faster than bind 9, so lots of people still like bind 8. I want to know how many lots was and how many of them were forwarding to Microsoft. So, to begin with, we need to find all the name servers out there. This will be useful later, like when we're messing with Sony. Speaking of that, just making sure I have time to mess with Sony. So, how do we go ahead and find name servers? Well, I could go ahead and do TCP scans on port 53, but I wanted to be a little bit trickier, and also there are name servers that do not support TCP sessions. So what I did was I generated a query for localhost. Pretty much every name server should know how to resolve localhost. It's kind of a common thing. Everyone is themselves. So I did a lookup for 1.0.0.0.127.inadder.arpa. It is a standard request that every name server should have a reply to. I expected everyone to reply localhost. About 90% of hosts did. 10% did not. They responded other very interesting things. But maybe 90% of those that had interesting things had, localhost.foo.com, just to be helpful and leaky about who they were. There were some other exceptions, but you can bug me later if you want to know what they were. So now that I went ahead and had like a huge number of name servers, let's figure out which ones are linked to which other ones. Now, I think I actually mentioned some of this stuff at Shmoocon last year, but I will go ahead and just go over what the basics are, figuring out if one host is forwarding to another. We have something called the recursion desired bit. This is lets you be able to control whether a server was going to look up values for you, whether it's going to, here's a request, please go investigate it, do a bunch of work, and come back to me when you have a response. Or you can just say, hey, if you already know this value, please tell it to me. But if not, just say, no, I don't know. You can go somewhere else. This recursion desired bit is enormously helpful. What we can do in the simple injection model is we go to a server and we have it do a lookup for some value we know is not going to have already been there. So maybe we control the domain, maybe we invent some random value for it to look up, but we recursively request one server, hey you, go, get this value. Then I go to every other server on my list and say, non-recursively, do you already know that value? Do you already know that value? Do you already know that value? And this guy went ahead and talked to any of you, those of you to go ahead and do the lookup, or if any of you are sharing caches with him, you're going to go ahead and already have this data for me. This mechanism is incredibly accurate. It is also dog slow. I got to go to, it's n squared. I go to him and have to go to you. I go to her and I have to go to all of you. I go to him, I got to go to all of you. So it doesn't scale worth the damn. I had 2.5 million hosts. You know what 2.5 million squared is? Gigantic. So that's not going to work so well. Now, more interesting is the TTL offset measurement mechanism. This is where you recursively request. I'd ask all of you, hey, go look up this unique value. Now, there are two things that can happen. Values in DNS actually come back with a timestamp on them. And that timestamp will actually say, is this date fresh? Is this, hot off the, remote server? Or it might be stale. So it might say 3,600 seconds. Hey, that's the original value. That's fresh data. Or it might be stale. Oh, you know what? I got this 60 seconds ago. And here's who, it won't say who I got it from. But guess what? I can look to see who I was scanning 60 seconds ago, and by that mechanism, figure out interrelationships. This works, but is a bit of a pain to work out the absolute perfect interrelationships. The dead simple mechanism is simply, so I go to him, and I find Alice. I say, hey, Alice, go look up alice.docsparrow.com. And then I see if Bob comes to me and says, hey, Dan, who's Alice at docsparrow.com? There's a pretty good chance that Alice was talking to Bob if Bob's asking me for Alice at docsparrow.com. So that's what I ended up doing. So what did I find? After all of this, I found about 2.5 million name servers. I used Roy Aren's FPDNS tool to go ahead and give me fingerprints on all of them. And I found that about 230,000 of them were forwarding to bind 8. It's like 10% of my sample set. Dear God. Found like 13,000 Windows name servers forwarding to bind 8, 53,000 in this other category, like all these bind 8 to bind 8 forwardings. Like apparently something that I really thought was limited to like a couple thousand or 10,000 hosts actually was at the scale of about 10% of the name server infrastructure. Big surprise to me. So what else did I find? Lots and lots of hosts doing reverse lookups. Actually, 38,000 hosts that, based on my traffic, would go ahead and investigate me. A bunch of these were actually invisible to me going out to them and seeing if they were there. I'm pretty sure I found people who were doing forensic investigation on the guy spamming the net with name server traffic. Hello, Mr. Forensics people, I see you. So I went ahead and repeated the scans back in November, and analysis is underway. This is 50 gigs here. Yeah, it's about 80 gigs right now. And there was a problem with my original analysis. See, I figured most of these networks that had name server relationships were pretty simple. Maybe you might have a cloud of boxes and each of them talks to some central guy. Or maybe, you don't have like big complex DNS relationships. There's just one guy who handles something for everyone else. In 40,000 cases, I was right. In 40,000 cases, there was one central name server that would back up, a couple other name servers. Then there's this other guy. That. Yeah, so there's this network. It's got like 220,000 name servers with 330,000 different name server relationships. The graph is 22 nodes deep. There's actually one server that if I ask it to look something up, like 1,200 different IPs. One of them was going to come back to me saying, hey, have you heard of this thing? I have no freaking clue. So I'm looking into this right now. Now, this is a little bit abstract. It does show relationships. Maybe it'd be nice if we had pictures that were more meaningful. Anyone here seen this before? Oh, yeah. Sony. So Sony did a, I don't know what to say, bad thing. A little, what's the word, criminal? So they placed malicious code on 2.1 million CDs. Now, there are people out there who seem to think that the malice was contained to the cloaking code. oh, it's bad. The actual badness is entirely contained to they hid their process. No. See, here's the deal, right? If you're my friend, but you refuse to leave my home, you're really quickly not my friend. And if you do that to all your friends, guess what? You got no friends anymore. Sony's DRM was designed to achieve the bare minimum, if any, consent, and then, once achieved once, never go away. You don't think someone asked, shouldn't there be an uninstaller with this software? How much software have you seen for Windows that doesn't ship with an uninstaller? It's kind of standard. Now, if your reaction to if people knew we were here, they'd try to get rid of us, is to make sure people don't know that you're there, you're a criminal. And you know it. And you very visibly know it. So, incidentally, repeatedly releasing broken uninstallers, the first of which actually patched the software to the latest version. Are you joking? So, how widespread is this problem? I don't know. We're security professionals, at least I am. I have different response to something that's on 100 hosts or 10,000 or 1 million. We could have been making a big deal out of nothing. You know, who would possibly be stupid enough to run software from Sony? Now, normally we'd get some data, say, you know, from Sony, but I kind of understand, you know, when you're a criminal, your lawyers tend to advise you don't release data. Microsoft, they could find out from their crash dumps, but they are kind of in a battle to the death involving Blu-ray, so I sort of see why they're not going to release the data. Antivirus vendors. Well, Sony sure approached them days after the story broke. Anyone hear anything from those guys since? Nothing. How many people have gotten an email from an antivirus vendor saying, oh yes, 2 million people infected by Sobig? These guys love telling you how much you're vulnerable to stuff. Except here. I can't say it, but Bruce Schneier sure can. What do we do when the makers of malware are colluding with the very people we pay to protect us from malware? I don't think I can disagree with that. So rather than waiting for, you know, someone to go ahead and volunteer some data, let's see if we can find it ourselves. Well, I'm looking at the, Mark Rusinovich's really cool paper about what this is doing, and it's like, it's these disks, when they go in, they make a lookup to connected.sonymusic.com. Now, this is not an IP address that the internet can route. To retrieve traffic from this address, we got to do a DNS lookup. Lookups go out, responses have to get cached. If they're cached, why are they cached? Well, they're cached because they might be useful to someone else. Who would they possibly be useful to? If only someone had a list of every named server in the world. Yeah, I kind of had to pull over the car and just be like, oh no, it is so on. So what I did is I basically sent non-recursive queries. So, the idea is, please tell me this. Have you been talking to Sony lately? Have you been talking to Sony lately? Just went around to every named server in the world, as far as I know.
In your scans, have you found DNS servers that don't honor the don't recurse bit?
Yes. And in fact, there's an entire slide about that. That's actually a serious problem. So, this method of using non-recursion, actually, Louis Grangio is the one who really discovered this mechanism, or really wrote the definitive paper on it, called DNS cache snooping for fun and profit. And he really did a very good job on it. I just went ahead and used this method against everyone. So what I find, holy crap, this stuff's everywhere. I know, I got the data and I just refused to believe it, because it was telling me 556,000 hosts in 165 countries were infected, which is very odd, because the discs were apparently only sold in the United States. Now, our original theory was CD piracy. Just because Sony didn't sell it doesn't mean it wasn't sold. We got here because people were stealing music, right? You think they were all stolen by people who did over MP3? No, the money is in actually selling some discs. So I looked at some statistics and actually found some supporting data for that. The RIAA confiscated 6 million pirate CDs in the United States in 2003, and they sure didn't get them all. So it is apparently really likely that a lot of these discs were that, the way it got into 165 countries is not even that Sony sold stuff, it's that Sony released bad things, and then the pirates accidentally copied Sony's viruses. I'm really not sure what to think about that. I can't give details. In fact, it was completely accidental that I released this info at all. But yes, there was .mil, there was .gov. Not all the .gov was American. Some of the .gov that's not American would be really unhappy about a Japanese corporation doing such things. Really unhappy. And then what did I do? I went ahead and just on a lark, based on a suggestion from a friend of mine, I threw it all on a globe. And that took, not too bad. Software for astrophysicists turns out to be really flexible. So, great question that was just asked. Are there servers that, even though you tell them not to look things up, will look them up anyway? And the answer is, yeah, there actually are. When I say 556,000, it was actually a little over 900,000 servers that responded to me with the Sony stuff. The problem is I went ahead and did a massive worldwide scan for a control value, known unique .docsparrow.com. And then I went to see, have you seen known unique? Have you seen known unique? And anyone that said, yeah, they'd seen it, I knew somewhere in their cache chain things were bad. And so I dropped them entirely. Ah, yes. That's number of name servers. The thing is, a name server can have one user behind it, or it can have 10,000. So the quote that I've been saying is this is almost certainly a hundreds of thousands to millions scale problem. The only people who know exactly how many affected nodes are Sony, because communications are coming back to them every time the disk comes in. Go ahead.
Have you tried estimating based on how stale cache is?
Getting entire properties on the so deep cache analysis is what's coming next. We'll talk about that in a bit. Also filtered out servers that returned incorrect records. Also filtered out servers that had very noticeably predictable TTL entries and so on. Go ahead. Do you mind if I have like another 10 minutes? All right. All right. I'm running over 2 hours, but there's like mad OpenGL stuff that you guys will probably want to see. Problems. So one of the names I was looking up, this updates.xcp-aurora.com. Well, this is a very popular name. It was supposedly connected to directly by the rootkit. I had 2 independent reverse engineers tell me that it was. Now, rootkit doesn't go there by default. That's not what the data hinted. The data really said lots of people were going here, which is actually very interesting. It implies that, yeah, this was actually this somehow managed to breach the mainstream. A lot of people were very paranoid. Oh my God, have I gotten this CD to, that CD that I bought, did it infect me? Other thing is not all things that went, there were other disks that went to connected.sonymusic.com. So what if, I only had like, it was only like 1% of the disks that were going to connected.sonymusic.com were actually infected with the rootkit. I got rather scared. What if my data was invalid? Well, it turns out, if you actually go to connected.sonymusic.com and you try to download the banner ad that it'll host, it 302 redirects you to xcpupdates.sonybmg.com. Yeah, tell me that one's not linked to XCP. So I went ahead and redid the scan. As in mid-December. There are some limitations. This XCP updates may not have been in place when the story broke. It actually does now host a very responsible and very good banner ad telling people, hey, you've come here, you might have a problem. And, I have to give them credit where absolutely credit is due. They're doing the right thing. And it actually covers disks that may have run the uninstaller by now. problem for XCP updates. It's actually not established that when you run the uninstaller and you put the disk in again, it doesn't just reinstall. I actually don't know if it does or doesn't. So presumably XCP updates.sonybmg.com does not apply to disks that never ever shipped with a potentially risky code, or else why would you want them to go ahead and be giving you this nasty banner ad? So with this thing that is very clearly tied to XCP, what kind of penetration rates were we seeing? Mind you, mid-December instead of when this all hit. And hey, look, we're still in the hundreds of thousands scale. 350,000 positive hits, again after control nodes are filtered out. 70,000 in Europe, 135 countries, still finding gov, still finding mil. The best available data suggests that this remains a large-scale problem. And now Sony continues to be invited to provide better data and, terms of Shmoocon releases of new information. In case there are any attorney generals who would like to subpoena that data, here's what I found on a per-state basis. Yeah. So there are some projects, but we're a little short on time, so I'm actually going to skip to something very specific. I like scanning big, what's the quote? I like big graphs, I cannot lie. Packet routes in with a itty-bitty length and a huge string in your face. You get sick because you fuzzed that trick. So there are some enormous graphs of data out there. And I wanted to see some pictures of them. In fact, when I showed you that big DNS graph, I found out that DNS was so complicated because I'm like, oh, let's throw this in a streaming graph and see what it looks like. Why is this not simple? This is supposed to be simple. This is very noticeably a gigantic amount of noise. So what I went ahead and I've built is a tool called Zovi. It is apparently the first streaming graph visualizer. I apparently accidentally solved a hard problem. Your inputs is a text description of each edge. Oh, it's really hard. Alice and Bob. 10.01.11 to 10.05.100. WWC and foo. We lay them out using this really cool algorithm called Fruchterman-Reingold, which has the interesting trait of not crashing. And we dump to OpenGL. What does this look like? Demo route. Wait, come on. There we are. Wait for it. Yoink. So what I did was I ended up finding some backbone traces, completely anonymized, of course. And you take the backbone traces and you just say, okay, take the source IP and take the dest IP. And draw a pretty picture with them. And believe it or not, it looks really cool. Another approach, and just to show you the raw data. Oh, this is going to be a pain because it's going to be all tiny and stuff. It's also going to take like forever to respond. The other thing I did is, let's see. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see this. So if you can or can't see it, just trust me. Those are just text descriptions of links. And this is going to be just, here's some source IP, or here's some source site, some file on my file system, and here's on a web page, and here's the referrer node. Like, here's what brought something to it. I go ahead and I demo web. So this is actually incredibly generic. This is built not just for me, which is kind of noticeable because a lot of other things are kind of only going to work for me. So the idea is that eventually we'll be able to like click on things and figure out what a particular cluster is. But in the meantime, it is actually kind of cool to be able to look at large networks and be like, hey, Mom, isn't this cool? And she actually sees what you're doing is cool. I'm just saying. So this code is very new. I just released it a couple days ago, or a couple weeks ago. Some things you can do, you can actually pipe live traffic in, SSH into a host, run TCP dump, pipe it into Zovi. You can go ahead and take some HTTP log and pipe it into Zovi. So you can take dynamic graphing linking data and just have it constantly running, and it will constantly be showing you for the last n seconds what the general theme of interrelationships is for arbitrary data. Here's the toy. Go play. In terms of portability, it is written for OpenGL and SDL. It should port, as far as I know, to everything. It is BSD licensed. Go do cool things, and tell me if you can help. Some stuff to do. These are directed graphs. A links to B. That should kind of be reflected in the data. So directed graphs should appear directed. Multi-sets. I should be able to compare different sets against each other. So here's my graph for port 80 stuff. Here's my graph for not port 80. More visual differentiators. Let's get some color in, more color in. Let's get some shape, some motion, some vibration. Active highlighting. It's not that hard to see where the mouse is pointing in SDL. Let's get some more information on where the mouse happens to be. A slightly more complex grammar for input. It would be very nice to actually have timestamps and to get an idea of what the time scale is that you're monitoring. Some labels for the graph. Some dynamic configuration of the system instead of just like magic keys, like visual sliders. So there's lots of things that are going on to make this more usable. The last thing to mention, and this is probably the best preview I can give you to what I'm going to be working on, now that we can go ahead and take huge amounts of data and put it into a nice graph theoretical framework brought to us by the Bruce Graph Library, which is insane just in terms of the usefulness of it, hey, we've got links to what's linking to everything else. We can go ahead and scan massive networks. And as we're scanning it, build a global topology and start coming to conclusions, start being able to make theories about if I send this packet, what parts of the network are going to be hit by that packet. And therefore, I can start saying, make sure I don't hit any part of the network more than X. Make sure no more than 10 kilobytes a second runs over any particular route. And then, once I go ahead and I have these theories about what's going to happen, I can determine critical nodes, critical edges, critical deviation points by analyzing the graph that I can start putting on canaries. I can start particularly pinging these hops in the topology. If I get responses from the wrong place, the topology has changed. And if the responses are not coming back, the canaries are dying. So I better slow down. So I can start going ahead and modeling the entire internet as basically like a high-pressure water system against which taps can be made. And I can know, as I'm sending traffic, that my responses are very likely to come back because I've not overloaded anything. So graphs are cool. Not just because they're OpenGL, but okay, the OpenGL is pretty cool too. So that's what I got. Those are my toys, and come bug me if you've got any questions.